There are shows with psychics.
And there are shows with doctors.
But there's no show like The Psychic and the Doc.
Your practical paranormal power unleashed.
This show synthesizes the talents of world-class medium Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer,
and street smart spiritualist, behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Baccili. All subjects are on the table and no topic is taboo. Inspiration, insight,
action, and fun as Mark Anthony connects callers with loved ones in spirit.
In tandem with Dr. Pat's fresh, no-nonsense, street-smart, intuitive insights. And she is hilarious.
Extraordinary problems
require extraordinary solutions, which may come from this side
or the other side. This is The Psychic
and the Doc, and it starts now. Welcome to Transformation Network. This is The Psychic and the Doc. I'm Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Dr. Pat Baccili, world-renowned behavioral, street-smart, spiritual psychologist. And this is our Thanksgiving episode. And we have a lot to be thankful for here at the Transformation Network. And what we're thankful for is all of you. And we really appreciate you tuning in. So, Dr. Pat, what's happening with you this Thanksgiving?
You know, it's really an interesting time. There are a couple of things that have made me really look back and look forward at the same time. It really doesn't make sense, but it does. And, you know, I had, it started off with a ping from Oliver in Germany. Now,
okay,
who the bleep is Oliver in
Oliver?
Germany? Oliver, Jessica, myself, Linda, and Chris DiPaolo. So this is my first thank you. Back in 2009, the economy was failing. It is one of the most painful times we have ever had in our history. And yet people have been forgotten. And as a matter of fact, Mark, we talked about forget-me-not.
Yeah, we did.
Right. But Chris passed away.
Sorry.
A month ago. He is the owner of WBLQ out of Rhode Island. Jessica and I just talked to him a month ago about a new venture. Without Chris, Oliver, Jessica, and Linda, there would be no, and Mary Verplank, who I've never mentioned, we would not be here now. And the reason that I'm talking about it is there are moments of things in my personal life I'm extremely grateful about. When I met Linda in 1971 or 72, and her mom immediately embraced me into their family, I can't even begin to tell you about what that felt like. But if there was ever a time, Mark, for us to experience Thanksgiving, I cannot remember a time where I felt so deeply and ingrained in it, for lack of a better word. But the idea that I'd hear from Oliver in Germany, Chris passing away, and an email that I'm getting ready to send to my team about where we're going, and everybody on our staff will be invited to come. But they'll be really clear about where they're going. And they'll have to really look at, are we really ready to take this crazy wild ride to the final conversation about the launch of the Transformation Network, which we've been blabbing about for about 13 years. Why now? Why has it all come together now? Mark, because it just is.
You know,
that's my big profound Thanksgiving.
You know, I pulled some quotes. About thankfulness. Okay. And when you were saying that, there's one by Omar Khayyam, and he said, "Be happy for this moment. This moment is your life." And what you just said, I think that's the perfect follow-up for that. It's happening now because it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And we all have things that we're grateful for in our lives. Oprah Winfrey said, be thankful for what you have, because then you'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, ever have enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's very profound.
It is.
I'm very thankful to be working with you, Dr. Pat.
I was just saying that. I was just talking to somebody about that. And they said, Pat, I remember when I wanted to, this is for real. I'm not going to mention names. I remember when I asked you to co-host with me, you really were kind of like, you didn't think that was good for you. You didn't think that was, I said, no, I didn't say it wasn't good for me. I said, first of all, I'm still learning how to be a host. And I was so aware of this invitation, I became totally intimidated. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to just totally mess up. But he said, sorry, Mark, how did you catch Mark Anthony? I said, there are just things in the universe you can't explain. And I'm so grateful for you, Mark.
Oh, likewise. It all fell into place. I remember my first book was coming out, and I sent a pitch to your show, the Dr. Pat Show.
Yeah.
And Linda got me on, and we had such a great rapport. And I think I took some calls from listeners. And then when I was on a speaking tour, and I was in Seattle, I was in studio on the Dr. Pat Show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple times. It was the second time we were in studio, and we were taking calls from listeners.
That's it.
And somebody called in, and I made a connection for this person, and she was suicidal. And then you chimed in, and we basically talked her off the ledge.
Yeah, we did.
And I remember afterwards, we were sitting down having a cup of tea or coffee or something, and Rocky was there, and I think Linda was there, and we were like, wow, that was real synergy. And then when COVID hit, we reconnected. I mean, we never disconnected, but but we reconnected. We said, well, why don't we try this show? And I remember you said, I have the name for it, The Psychic and the Doc.
Yeah.
And here we are. And we just passed our 2-year anniversary. We're going strong. Transformation Network is just nailing it. And it's such a privilege to be able to do this. And what's really wonderful is the global reach of this show. We get callers from all over the world. And I mean, what an honor to be able to touch people. So that is one of the things I am thankful for. And for all the listeners, there's a lot of people. These are challenging times. We've had COVID, economy's up and down, and it's scary right now. We got a crazy guy in Moscow and whose finger seems to be itching to hit the button. We have another one in North Korea.
Didn't he accidentally send a missile message to Poland? But you're right about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that are very afraid right now, but it's important to focus on, it sounds corny. It sounds like something my grandmother was said, count your blessings. Well, sometimes we just have to. And Willie Nelson said, when I started counting my blessings, my whole life turned around. And somehow when I hear like Willie Nelson, I think there may be a cloud of cannabis wafting through the biosphere. But the thing is,
come on, let's be real. I think all of us at some point walk through a cloud of cannabis. Okay, I'm not calling you out or anything. Maybe not you, Mark.
Well, I've it was funny before we went on air. Our producer for this episode is Lydia. Yeah, and we were talking about she had lived in Colombia for a while because her dad worked there, and and Rocky said, well, she'd been down in Colombia and all this, and of course, Colombia with the cartels and all that. And I was telling her about going into the evidence lockers, as a prosecutor and then as a defense attorney, and seeing all like hundreds of pounds of marijuana, hundreds of pounds of cocaine. And it's funny because they have to keep the drugs until the case is disposed of. And if a case goes up on appeal, maybe it'd have to go back to trial. But the funny thing was, and we noticed this so much when I was a prosecutor, let's say they put in 1,000 grams of marijuana, and then it went back to trial, and suddenly it was only 700 grams of marijuana. And the lab techs were, oh, well, it dehydrated. It's like, really?
Oh my God. But look, we're taking a snapshot back in life, and we're going to be doing some incredible shows as we move forward. I cannot help but stop for a minute. And I got to tell you, there's a commercial on TV by a well-known actor, Jeff Bridges.
Yeah.
I love Jeff.
Yeah.
I watched his show, like the Old Man Show, whatever that was. But there's this commercial, and he's got his guitar and he's walking around. And if he did not epitomize, we have to get that commercial to play here in the show, because he's walking around and you get the sense from him. He talks about cancer, COVID. He's walking around with his guitar, right? And if you know anything about the journey he went on, what he's doing is his expression of gratitude. I say commercial. I don't know if it's commercial, but it's something, it's a reminder. And he's walking around in this field, and you get the sense, especially when you see his face at the end, this is a man that has been through hell.
Yeah.
But unlike Christopolo and many others, he came out the other side. And in this Thanksgiving, it's not about the network that I want to talk about. It's the people. When I talk about Linda, Jessica, Oliver, and Chris, now Linda knew me, and out of everybody I mentioned, I was the highest risk for her to say yes to be part of this. Why? What's the expression? Can anybody read this? Linda did this. Can anybody read that thing? Do I have to unmirror myself, Lydia?
It says, you'll always be my best friend. You know too much. That sums it up. That's so John Gotti. Always be my best friend. You know too much.
But here's why I wanted to do this show, and you wanted to do this show today. We have fielded hundreds of callers. We have done the best we can to support them. At the network, we're going to do better. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you got Eclipse information. Maybe Rocky's got Eclipse information or some information. But there was magic on 11/11 for us. The magic that happened for us is going to be outlined in a very long email to all the producers, hopefully later today. But here's the magic. You could not plan for Merrick, our programmer genius that came behind Oliver, who, by the way, designed our entire infrastructure. Oliver was the guy that in archaic programming designed our ability, because I didn't know nothing. I know nothing. Here's what I said to Oliver in Germany, right? He's in Germany and he's running TTR from a basement back room in my apartment with computer equipment, Jessica and Heather, in a teeny room with my clothes closet. And who knows what it is. And Oliver responded to a freelancer job description that was so bizarre, Mark. It would be like if I wanted to write the most bizarre job description for somebody that had every skill on the planet, including running a broadcast station, which I knew nothing about. And Oliver, within an hour, says, I can do it. He ran TTR from Germany. When Sam broadcasted, we didn't have the fancy dancy Zoom and all we have now. We didn't have it. The bottom line for that is he set everything up in Sam Broadcaster. Heather and Jessica had to figure out how to program that. I had to program it. Linda was editing shows remotely from New Jersey.
Wow.
Where the sound was not aligned. So the sound wave would come through like now, and it says come through, but she wouldn't get the sound until 3 seconds later. So here's what I'm grateful for. I am grateful for the loyalty and the steadfast belief in our listeners and audience, Mark. You know
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for everybody that has ever touched our shoulders. We come here, as Gloria Steinem said to me once, Pat. She said, Pat, I just stand on the shoulders of all that come before. And if we can recognize that, all of us today, if we can recognize that, whether you're upset about the election, if you can just recognize that you're standing on the shoulders of so many people have been your angels and your guardians. I mean, Mark, I know you've had a few, right? I mean,
Oh
I
my
think
gosh, yeah.
Rocky's like, she hasn't given up on you yet.
No, she hasn't. And you know what?
Right, Rocky?
Let's let everybody think about that, and we'll be right back after this break. I'm Mark Anthony. You're here with Dr. Pat and me, and this is the Psychic and the Doc on the Transformation Network. Welcome back. I'm Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer, and I'm here with Dr. Pat Baccili. And for everybody who is facing the holidays without a loved one, and you're looking at that empty chair, the empty closet, and let me tell you, it can be really hard. And I don't have to tell you that. Or if you know somebody, you don't know what to give them for the holidays, I recommend my latest book, The Afterlife Frequency. And you can go to my website, afterlifefrequency.com, and you can order my books. And they are written to help people cope with loss by explaining the reality of spirit communication. And it's based on science. And my books read like novels. I'm not going to bore you with a long and winding treatise. So please visit my website, afterlifefrequency.com. You can sign up for my newsletter to keep up to date on upcoming episodes of The Psychic and the Doc. And also you can schedule a reading with me. And the reason I'm talking about loss is because Dr. Pat is, before we went to break, Dr. Pat, you were telling us about how grateful you are for this Uber team that you put together. And the thing is, everything fell into place. But not only did things fall into place, but then something happened. And could you tell us about that?
Yeah. And, you know, it was a pivotal moment for me to have that thought, but it made me really think about a lot of other things. It made me think about the team we have now. It made me think about the fact that second to me, Kim has been here the longest. It made me think about the four people, the four new producers that are sitting not together today because they've been given a full day assessment to do. You know, it really came to me when I got pings from them asking questions that nobody should know how to ask in 6 weeks. But when I go back in time, what I was struck by is I have had so many shoulders that I get to stand on in my life. You know, Mary Louise Smith, one of the hardest managers I've ever had, that wouldn't let me open my mouth until I could answer, what part of the problem are you? And I would say, I just want to ask you, what do you want for lunch? What part of the problem are you? I mean, it was like beyond the ridiculous. And I said, you know what my part of the problem is? First of all, I even asked you to get lunch. Okay, so we laughed. She said, no, you're right. I know what you get for lunch. You get the same thing. Same thing for lunch every Friday. I know what you get for lunch. But I have so many angels. And I have to give a shout out, can I? To two people I have not mentioned.
Absolutely.
In 2003, we're coming up with 20 years for the Dr. Pat Show. The show was crust busting. I have to give a shout out for all of the angels that have been in my life before anybody heard a crust busting show or knew anything about me. But then I want to give a shout out to Tacy Trump. 2003, my first show was not out of Seattle. It was with Voice America. And then KKNW. But I think this is a time for everybody, and I don't want to go on about it. I've had so many. But this is a time to try to put your resentment aside and do something kind
Yes.
or someone that did something for you or for someone that didn't. You see, it's all about our behavior, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. That is so profound. I saw something recently on Twitter where this young lady's asking, "Do any of you hold the door open for a stranger?" And I wrote, "Yeah, all the time." I mean, my parents taught me, I was raised to be a gentleman, and you hold the door open for a lady or for an elderly person. And to me, that's just something that you do. And recently I was at this grocery store and I saw this elderly gentleman. He had to be in his 90s, and he had a cap on that said World War II veteran. I said, "Thank you for your service." He goes, "Well, thank you." He goes, "Thank you, young man." And it made me feel good to be called young man. And I could see he couldn't even lift his bags. And I said, "Do you want me to help you?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, would you?" And he said, "My wife is so sick. I think she's dying." And I helped him to his car and I put his, groceries. And I'm not saying this to get, pats on my back,
Yeah.
because that's just what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was, I helped him in his car and all that. And the sad thing is I haven't seen him since, because I go to that same grocery store, and but I remember some lady goes, "Do you always help people?" I said, "Well, isn't that what we're supposed to do?"
Mm.
And we have to be thankful, because many people have extended kindness to me throughout my life, and some of them were perfect strangers, and they had no reason to, or they weren't going to get anything out of it. And we can quote people and say, "Be the change you want to see in the world." But this is how we do make the world a better place. It is helping people. And that doesn't mean you have to go around throwing money at people and all that. It may be as simple as holding the door open for an elderly person in a walker who's struggling to get in and out of some place. And we should give thanks that we are able to do that for someone. So Cicero said, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtue, but the parent of all the others." So when you start being thankful and giving gratitude and giving thanks, then that puts you in a mindset where you're going to help other people. And that's what the Psychic and the Doc is all about.
Yeah. That's why we did it, Mark. We didn't do it because we wanted to do another show. And I think what you realized is there's something that together we could do to help more people in even in a more profound way. I think that was really what attracted us to it, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Thanksgiving, and I know I like to go off on tangents, but when I remember being a little kid and we learned about their first Thanksgiving and all, and basically it was a group of white people who came to Massachusetts, landed at Plymouth, totally unable to handle the environment. And a year later, they gave thanks to the Native Americans who rescued them from starving to death. And one of my favorite off-the-wall movies, it's the second Addams Family movie with Angelica Houston. It's called Addams Family Values. Yeah. And the kids have to do a Thanksgiving play, and Wednesday is dressed up as a Native American woman with Pugsley. And so like the bad kids, they cast as the Native Americans, and all the blonde, blue-eyed, waspy kids were the Pilgrims. And the Pilgrims come up and the line is, "Oh, we're so thankful." And Wednesday goes, "But wait, the gods of my people have said that we cannot trust you." And it turns into this whole thing. And the first Thanksgiving, the reason that the Pawtucket Indians were helping the Pilgrims is because their chief Powhatan wanted them to use their cannons and firepower to make war against other Native American tribes. And so when you start looking at the real thing, it gets a little bit scary. But one of the things I wanted to bring up was the Pilgrims were very grateful to, there was this one Native American by the name of Squanto. And, we hear about him mentioned. And Squanto spoke English because he'd been captured by the English and sold into slavery, and then managed to escape when he got back to the New World. I guess they brought him to be a scout. But what he taught the Pilgrims was the three sisters. And it's planting corns, beans, and squash together. And this is one of the theories. It's probably something I'm going to write an article on someday. But in my work examining Native cultures and phenomenon, I've been with Native Americans in the Northeast, at the Hononaki, in Arizona, in the Yucatan, and in Peru. And every one of the Native American civilizations all knew the secret of the three sisters. Now, why is that? The Europeans never figured it out. Some genius figured this out. And what happens is, the reason they call them the three sisters, you dig a hole and you put corn, beans, and squash in there. The corn offers the beans. It grows as a stalk to support so that the bean can grow up. And then the beans pull nitrogen from the air and put it in the soil, which benefits all three. And then as the beans grow and they go through the tangle of the squash and the corn, they hold the three together. Then the squash has these large leaves which shade the roots and prevent weeds from growing, plus the prickly squash leaves keep away raccoons and other pests. So there's this symbiotic relationship between the corn, the beans, and the squash. And one of the reasons there is a Thanksgiving is because Squanto taught the Pilgrims this. They actually had a bountiful harvest and they didn't starve to death.
Yeah. You see, that's what I love about you. I can count on you to bring us up to date for a level of appreciation of why we're even here talking about it. And we don't do this enough. Now, it's interesting how you and I got involved with Native traditions. Well, I'm 19 and I'm dating a member of the Chippewa, right? As I got older, one of my best friends here in the Pacific Northwest created a coming of age program, Monica Sicard, amazing. My mentor was vision questing people for 30 years before she passed. But see, these are shoulders of people. We stand on the shoulders of people that come. If we can remember this, and I really want to ask people to do this. I'm not saying, Mark and I do not have our heads in the sand.
No.
We know what's going on in the world. We know about yesterday's announcement. We know about election. We know this. And if you want to talk to me, I've been through so many decades of what it's like to really take things very seriously. But today, it's not about that. Today is a message where part of our Thanksgivings can be very funny. When we come back, got a couple of really, I don't believe I'm going to tell this story. Got a couple of really, really funny things to talk about. But what happens when you can make the most ridiculous Thanksgiving food mistakes and people still love you? Yeah. That sweet potato pie, you forgot to put the sugar in, they ate it anyway. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with the Psychic and the Doc. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Psychic and the Doc. This is a special edition for Mark and I to really be reflecting on this Thanksgiving. And this Thanksgiving is different. It's different because we're not having to sit alone, per se. There are some restrictions still, masks and things, but it is a far cry from where many people were last year. Many people dreading Christmas approaching. So many things we could talk about. And, you know, it's not just last year, but there's a new sense of freedom now. And so part of this, when we talk about Thanksgiving, you got to learn to laugh at yourself a little bit. You just got to learn to laugh, Mark, right? I mean, I know you got some funny stuff.
Yeah. My family, my dad's family was of English descent, but my mom's family was Italian. And my dad said, when you marry into an Italian family, forget about your DNA, the Italian takes over. And so I had just moved into this house, and I was so excited to have everybody over for Thanksgiving, the whole family, and had like 10 or 12 people there. And so we're about to have dinner, and everyone said, well, Mark, why don't you say grace? And I said, well, let's go around and have everybody say what they're thankful for. Oh my God. My sister-in-law said something that irritated my brother. My dad said something that provoked my mom, and all of a sudden this huge argument breaks up, and everyone's like, you didn't say you were thankful for me,
Oh my gosh.
and so I go, well, it worked really well on Dawson's Creek last night, I learned, don't spring something like that on people. If you say, think of something you're thankful for. But the funny thing is, also everyone's blood sugar was low. So, but after they ate, and by the time dessert came around, I remember just sitting there and looking, and everybody that I loved at that time was alive, and they're all laughing and having fun.
Yeah.
And they were having pumpkin pie and apple pie and drinking coffee and wine. And I said, and this is what it's all about. It's all about being thankful for the people in your life.
Yeah.
And but Johnny Carson said something really funny about Thanksgiving. He said, it's an emotional holiday. We travel thousands of miles to be with people that we see only once a year, only to discover once a year is way too much.
That's right. It is. But it is. Look, I mean, this is also a time to really reflect on, some of the really funny things in life that happen. When Linda and I first met in about 1972, we worked for the same company. We had a mutual friend. And then we could not have predicted what our lives would be like. I had just come off of homeless, really transient still, just got the job at the phone company. And Linda's parents decide, Joan, they're going to move to Texas. He got the big promotion. So Linda's like, I'm not going. I was like, I am not going to Florida with you people. My family moved to Homestead. And I'm like, I am not going. And Linda's like, I'm not going to Texas. And so here we are one evening, and Joan is Linda's mom, and just looked at her and said, look, you two, you're like oil and vinegar, but you should get an apartment together, because if you're left alone, you will cause disaster. I never knew what she meant 2 years later, but we ended up doing this. So here we are. First Thanksgiving, nobody there. I'm cooking the turkey. Now, I have never cooked a turkey in my life. Of course, Linda comes from a family that they cook and they eat. They got the whole thing. But I'm going to cook the turkey. I'm cooking it, because how hard could a turkey be to cook? And we're in this teeny apartment with this little teeny stove, almost like a kid stove, right? But I mean, come on. Neither one of us makes a lot of money. I think I was making like $70 a week or something. But I'm like, I know how to do it. I'm going to cook the turkey. So great. And we're going to have a couple of people over. Great. I'm cooking the turkey. They're going to bring on this stuff. I had one thing to do, the turkey. So we get the turkey. I put it in the oven. And then an hour goes past. Linda says, how is it looking? I look in the oven. I say, I think it looks good. Okay. Then, we're playing cards. We're doing the stuff we do. Back then, we were all drinking. Not a little bit. We were really all drinking. And then, Linda's like, okay, it's like 2.5 hours. It's not a giant turkey. Take a look. And, Linda's very diplomatic about stuff like this. She comes from a family of mentors. And so they mentor you. They let you learn things. So Linda never looked in the oven. And it wasn't the oven that you got the glass door, so you can't see it. It's like an oven, like, no, you can't see it. And I look and I said, I think the turkey's doing really good. I have no idea what a turkey's supposed to look like after 3 hours. None, zero. Finally, enough time passed and the turkey has to come out because we're going to eat it. So Linda, myself, my friend Evelyn, I can't remember who else is there, probably too much to drink. And I pulled and I opened the door and I pulled the turkey out. And Linda looks at the turkey and says, how long has the turkey been out? I said, it's been in the oven since you see me put it there. And then Linda puts her hand in the oven. I never turned on the oven. A 5-hour turkey, and never realized there's no heat coming out of the oven. We went and got pizza. We got pizza. But I mean, but the reason I'm sharing it is nobody got crazy. Nobody called me stupid. Linda felt really, really bad. Like, oh my God, like, what is Evelyn going to say? Because Evelyn was a little tough. But there are so many moments like that where you think about them and we laugh about it to this day. I literally thought that turkey that looked like it had no brown stuff on it, there was nothing that looked crispy. I'm thinking that that's a done turkey. Now, fast forward today, I'm a pretty good cook, Mark. I bet you got stories like that, though.
Yeah, but that's how we learn how to cook. You learn how to do those things. What's that old expression? We learn by our mistakes. And it's like, but as Carl Sagan said, if you wish to make an apple pie truly from scratch, you must first invent the universe. So.
Oh my God, I got to think about that. I'm going to have to call you later. You can explain that to me. But, this is a time where we do gather. We do have laughter. All we talk about sometimes is the horrible family holiday stories. And I want to invite people to create a new holiday. I really want to invite people to create a new holiday. I may not be able to go back to New Jersey this year. And so I'm going to try to figure out how Linda could come for a couple of weeks. And we have to create something new. All of you, phenomenal job during COVID. And if I thank Zoom one more time, I'm going to thank them again. Yeah. There was such a need. You had Zoom dinners. I know that sounds a little harsh. But this year, for the people that can't come, why don't you put them in your Zoom dinner? Why don't they participate in whatever way they can? Mark, what's your message?
I think that exactly what you said, Dr. Pat. It isn't the elaborate dinner. It isn't, how great the food is. It's being thankful for the people. And look, having really good food does help. I mean, it's kind of hard not to like Thanksgiving. It's all about food. But the whole point of this holiday, and one of the things I always liked about Thanksgiving is, unlike Christmas, where you have, this, you got to give the presents and there's all these traditions. Thanksgiving is sitting down and breaking bread. And so that is what everybody listening should do. And don't do Thanksgiving alone. If you are alone, then go find a restaurant somewhere. Go sit there and be around other people. I remember for a couple years after my mom had passed, my dad, he reconnected with this woman that he knew when he was in high school. And they were together. And we used to go to Steak and Shake because it was open on the holiday. And we'd eat burgers or turkey burgers and have pumpkin milkshakes, and because it was different. We weren't trying to recreate what my mom used to do and what his lady friend used to do with her husband and her kids, and we created just this funny little tradition. And so the point is, reach out to the people that you care about. Give thanks for them. That's my message.
Yeah, and I want to just say this to everybody, Mark, because you just hit me with something. When I moved to Seattle, I moved to the most incredible place of volunteers. Now, I'm not saying where you live isn't. I know there are other places, but where I came from, it was hard to find the services that we have here. And I remember my first year coming here. I had been 2 years sober, so I was on a recovery journey. And I lived on Capitol Hill. And I'm grateful for the fact that I got an apartment 20 feet away from an Alano club that was open 24/7. But here's what I want to say. I met incredible people that plugged me into doing service. On Turkey Day, we made meals in Turkey. It was called Chicken Soup Brigade. And it was for all of the people that were HIV positive that couldn't do it on their own.
Wow.
I never stopped doing service on Thanksgiving. That is something, if you are alone, you can find a place for your heart to be filled. Mark, what are your last words? Why don't you take last words tonight?
Well, I think my last words should be those of Tecumseh, who was a Shawnee chief. When you arise in the morning, give thanks for the food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason for giving thanks, the fault lies only in yourself.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for tuning us in and turning us on. And I want to say, look, we will continue to do what we do. We're here for you. We're planning some things very exciting. And from all of us here at the Transformation Network, Transformation Talk Radio, Mark, Rocky, Linda, the entire producing team, please know you're in our hearts. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into The Psychic and the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Baccili, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on The Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. That's TransformationTalkRadio.com. And don't forget, we're also live face-to-face on Facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio.